Punctuation is powerful. Maybe you've heard that phrase before, but punctuation can change the tone of a phrase, or it could change the whole meaning of a phrase, because punctuation is powerful. Punctuation is powerful because it can save us from a lot of things. Punctuation can save you and I from embarrassment. I saw a sign one time that said, "Say no to drugs," from the North Miami Beach Police Department. The police department was extremely embarrassed when parents were calling and wanting to know why the police department was offering their children drugs. Punctuation can save your relationship. There was a man who had been working late every night of the week, and so he decided to send his wife flowers, and he told the florist, he said, "On the card, please write, 'I'm sorry, I love you.'" However, the florist forgot the punctuation, and when the lady received the flowers, the card said, "I'm sorry, I love you." Punctuation can save you and I money. A lady texted her husband, and she wanted to buy a bracelet that cost $1,000 and wanted to know if they could afford it. The man wanted to text back, "No, price too high." Instead, she received a text that said, "No price too high." And so she bought the bracelet. Sometimes punctuation can actually save lives. I saw this hilarious sign that was posted along a walking trail that said, "Hunters, be careful while hunting pedestrians while on the walking path." I don't know if I'd want to walk on that path. And punctuation can save us time. This was an actual conversation between my wife Beth and I. As we were heading out the door, getting ready to get into the car, she said to me, she said, "Got the keys?" with a question mark. But what I heard was, "Got the keys?" with a period. By the time we got to the car, we realized that neither one of us had got the keys. Now, it's Easter. I don't want to give you a grammar lesson, but it reminds me of what Joe Lomacio wrote in his book entitled, "If I Die Before I Live." In that book, he asked this question. He said, if you were asked to describe Easter, and you weren't allowed to use any words, but only could describe Easter with a punctuation mark, how would you describe Easter? For some people, they would describe Easter with a period. It's just a day. It's a holiday. It's a day in which we can have candy and hunt for Easter baskets. For other people, Easter is a comma, where it causes us to pause in our lives for a little bit, maybe reflect a little bit, maybe go to church, but then life resumes back to normal after that. For some people, Easter is represented by a question mark, because there's a lot of unanswered questions, and you're not fully convinced about the reality of Easter. For some, they would describe Easter with quotation marks. For them, it's just absurd, it's ridiculous, it's unbelievable that somebody would rise from the dead. And for some, Easter is an exclamation point, because it has made a difference in their lives. Easter is extremely important because Easter answers the most important question in the world, maybe the most important question you could ever be asked. And that question is, who is Jesus? And how we answer the question about Easter will help us to answer the question about who is Jesus. For the last few weeks, I've been going through the book of Matthew, doing a series entitled The King of Kings, and we've seen different teachings of Jesus, and we've seen different miracles that Jesus performed. And I've said throughout this series that Jesus is the King who came to change everything. But you know, it's not the teachings that Jesus gave that convinced his followers that he was who he said he was. It wasn't the miracles that he performed that convinced his followers. You see, what convinced his followers in the first century that he was the King of Kings, that he was the promised Messiah, was his resurrection. You see, it's the resurrection that changes them from scared skeptics to mighty martyrs. It's the resurrection that changed their lives. And understand that apart from the resurrection, really the account of Jesus' life is not really that important. Because apart from the resurrection, Jesus was just another rabbi who had lived just another rabbi in the long line of rabbis. Apart from the resurrection, Jesus was just another man who grew up as the son of a carpenter. Apart from the resurrection, Jesus was just another individual who was crucified and put to death by the Roman Empire. You see, it's the resurrection that changes everything. It's the resurrection that helps us to answer that question, who is Jesus? And I want to share with you today, the take-home truth that I want to give you today on this Easter day, on this resurrection celebration day, is that the exclamation point of history is the resurrection of Jesus. The resurrection of Jesus is the exclamation point in all of history. Because it's the resurrection that verifies who Jesus is. For you and I, if somebody asks us to verify our identity, we pull out a driver's license or we have a passport, and that document can verify who we are. It's the resurrection that verifies that Jesus is who he said he is. In Romans chapter 1, verse 3, there it says that he was born as a descendant of David according to the flesh. But he was resurrected from the dead, and through that it showed that he was the Son of God. Now, we have been walking through Matthew, and we've seen that he is the King of Kings, the King who came to change everything. And we left off last week, and Jesus had died on the cross. And there were people who witnessed this death. In Matthew chapter 27, Matthew writes this in verse 55, "Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons." And there Jesus died on the cross. They took him down off the cross. And in verse 57, Matthew says, "As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of a rock. He rolled a stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb." And there they were. They saw him die on the cross. They saw his body placed in the tomb. And I can only assume that they were shocked. I mean, all the events that had transpired just within 24 hours just probably left them shocked and stunned. I'm sure they were probably saddened. I mean, here was this man that they had followed for 3 years. He was maybe the most important person in their lives. And I can only assume that maybe they were skeptical. Because Jesus, it wasn't his teachings, it wasn't his miracles, but Jesus claimed to be the Messiah. And they had to be skeptical. At this point, there are no Christians because the Christ is dead. The movement has fizzled out because the Messiah is no longer alive. And as they saw that rock being rolled in front of the tomb, and as that rock came to rest in front of the tomb, I can assume that all the hope that they had was dead. The lights had went completely out on their faith. And everything that they had hoped and dreamed about was now all over. And the reason why is because they expected this person who was dead to do what all dead people have done, to remain dead. And for them, as the stone rolled in front of the tomb, they would have said that for them, Easter was a period. He was dead, period, all over. But what we're going to see here today, that the exclamation point of history is the resurrection of Jesus. And so Matthew describes what happens, and we're going to look at these first few verses of Matthew chapter 28. I just want to read them to you today so that you get the flavor of what happened on this first Easter Sunday. It says, Matthew says this, "After the Sabbath at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, 'Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you.' So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them. 'Greetings,' he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, 'Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me.'" The resurrection of Jesus is the exclamation point of history. And what we see here first is the arrival of the women. And Matthew recorded what happened. He said, "After the Sabbath, at dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb." Now, the reason why they go, Mark kind of fills us in his account. And he said they had bought spices and they were going to anoint the body. Because when Jesus died there on the cross, it was the day before the Sabbath. It was Passover week, and it was one of the highest holy days of the year. And so they didn't want to leave the body on the cross, so they took it down in a hurry, and hurriedly they laid it in a tomb. And now the Sabbath was over. It was the first day of the week, and they were going to the tomb so that they could properly embalm the body of Jesus. Because everyone knew that he was dead. I mean, the women sat there and they knew he was dead. Joseph of Arimathea, when he put Jesus' body in the tomb, he knew he was dead. When the stone was rolled in front of the tomb, all of Jesus' disciples and his followers, they knew he was dead. Pilate knew that Jesus was dead. He was surprised that he died so quickly, but he knew he was dead. The soldiers, the Roman soldiers that were there, they knew that Jesus was dead. Everyone knew that he was dead, and they were expecting him to stay dead, because dead people don't rise from the dead. I remember a number of years ago, myself and my son and my daughter, we were in the backyard of our house, and my dog had actually killed a rabbit in our backyard, and my son found it. And he picked up the rabbit that was now dead, and he was trying to get the rabbit to run, and he was saying, "Run, bunny, run, bunny." And of course, he would let go of the rabbit and it would fall over. And my daughter looked at him and said, "Holden, you need to understand that dead bunnies don't run," because we expect dead things to remain dead. And that's what everyone here, they expected Jesus to be dead. That's why the women went to the tomb. No one expected the tomb to be empty. No one expected a resurrection. No one was standing outside of the tomb counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, cue the sun, 5, 4. They weren't standing there waiting for him to rise from the dead. They did not expect him to resurrect. And even the fact that Matthew would describe that the women were the first ones to go to the tomb, it shows us that this had to be a real account, because if they were writing this and making it up, they would have made themselves the heroes here. Because nobody expected nobody. And over again, it wasn't what he taught. It wasn't what he performed. It's what he claimed. And here, they thought it was all over. And as they approached the tomb that first Easter Sunday morning, for them, they would have described Easter as a period. It was all over. It was final. It was done. Period. End of the story. But that's not what happened. What they're going to discover is that the exclamation point of history is the resurrection of Jesus. And as they enter the tomb, what we see next is the announcement of the angel. In verse 2, Matthew recorded, he said, "There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, he rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, 'Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you.'" In Luke's recording of these events, Luke said that the women went into the tomb first and they looked and the tomb was empty. And Luke said they were perplexed. They were perplexed because they expected a body to be in the tomb. They were perplexed because it was empty. They were perplexed and wondering what happened to the body. They were probably perplexed wondering who would take the body of Jesus. And because their observation did not line up with their expectation, they needed an explanation. And the angel gives them an explanation. It's a threefold command that he gives to him. He says, first of all, fear not. In verse 5, Matthew said that the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." And actually, the way Matthew wrote that, it literally translated, "Stop being afraid." I mean, don't be afraid. Jesus, he knew exactly what they were looking for. They were looking for Jesus who had been crucified. The next command that he tells them is to come and see. In verse 6, he said, "He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay." I mean, look, he's not here. He's risen from the dead. And how I can prove that is just come and look where his body was lying. And he's not here. And then the next command that he gives to the ladies is to go and tell. In verse 7, he said, "Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." Twice in these verses, the angel says to the women, he has risen. In Matthew, when he wrote this in the original Greek language, it really was one word. And that one word is the foundation, is kind of like an inverted pyramid. And all of Christianity, all of my faith and all of your faith rests on that word, that he is resurrected. And the angel says he's resurrected just as he said. 6 different times in Matthew's gospel, Matthew said that there were 6 different times that Jesus said to his disciples, "I'm going to go to Jerusalem, I'm going to be arrested, tried, and crucified, but then I will rise again." And maybe the 11 greatest words in the history of the world are these: he is not here. He is risen, just as he said. And what happens with the women here is that how they would have described Easter just moments ago was with a period, but now it has a lot of question marks. Like the question marks are, where is he? How did he rise from the dead? And what they're going to see is their question marks are going to be replaced with exclamation points, because what we see next is the affirmation of Jesus. In verse 8, Matthew said, "So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy." So they were afraid. They had no idea what was going on here, but there was joy associated with it. You see, they came to the tomb with tears in their eyes, and they left with smiles on their face. They came to the tomb saddened, but they were leaving joyful. And they were running to tell his disciples. And then what happens is as they turn to run from the tomb, as they're running from the tomb, something happens that they did not expect. And Matthew says suddenly, I mean instantly, Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. And they came to him, clasped his feet, and worshiped him. You see, this was a bodily resurrection, because they were able to hold on to his feet. And there we see that it really does define and describes who Jesus really is, that he is the Son of God. And there they worshiped him. And then he said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." He said, "Go and tell them to go to Galilee, and there they will see me risen again." And now, the period that became a question mark is now an exclamation point, because now they encountered what the angel had described to them. The Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified, he is not here. He is risen from the dead, just as he told you. And as they leave, they meet the one who was dead, but now is alive. He is the King of Kings. He is the King who came to change everything. And on that first Easter Sunday morning, he changed everything, and everything changed. Because the exclamation point of history is the resurrection of Jesus. And it's just not the exclamation point of history, but because of the resurrection, it places an exclamation point on some other important areas of my life and your life. Because of the resurrection, God has placed an exclamation point on his promises. The angel said to the ladies, "He is not here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said, just as he promised you. He is risen from the dead." And that resurrection puts an exclamation point on all the promises of God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20, the Apostle Paul wrote these words. He said, "As many promises as are made by God," he said, "they are yes in Jesus Christ." Every single promise that God has made to me and God has made to you are yes in Jesus Christ. I want you to think about that just for a second. When God promises to never leave you or forsake you, he looks at the empty tomb and says, yes. When God promises to provide for every one of your needs, he looks at the empty tomb and he says, yes. When God promises that there is nothing that can separate us from his love, he looks at the empty tomb and there he says, yes. When God promises to give us power in the midst of our weakness, he looks at the empty tomb and there he says, yes. The empty tomb, the resurrection of Jesus, puts an exclamation point on all the promises of God. Someone has said that there are like 9,000 specific promises in all of Scripture. And every single one of them, all 9,000 promises are yes in Christ Jesus. He looks at every single one of those 9,000 promises, and he looks at the empty tomb, and there God says yes. Because it is the exclamation point on the promises of God. The empty tomb is just not the exclamation point on the promises of God, but it's also the exclamation point in the entirety of life. In John 10:10, there Jesus said, he said, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But then Jesus said, but I have come to give you life, and life in abundance. You know, he says, we have an enemy. We have an enemy who only wants to come steal, kill, and destroy everything that is good and proper and righteous in your life. He wants to steal, kill, and destroy your marriage. He wants to destroy the good things in your life. He wants to destroy your faith. He wants to destroy your testimony. He wants to destroy the relationship that you have with your kids. He wants to come, steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and have it in abundance. You see, because the tomb is empty, today my life is overflowing because of the empty tomb. You see, it's because of the empty tomb that we have hope even when we lose our job. We have hope even when the diagnosis doesn't go the way in which we want. We have hope when the relationship seems to come to an end, that it is the exclamation point on life. But it's just not the exclamation point on this life, but it's the exclamation point. The empty tomb is the exclamation point on the life yet to come. In John 11:25, there Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. You see, Jesus came out of the tomb to give everlasting life to you and to me. And he said, I am the resurrection and the life, so that when this life is over, that we have life that is yet to come. And it's the exclamation point on the entirety of life. The exclamation point of history is the resurrection of Jesus. And I just want you to think about this just for a minute. If Jesus can resurrect from the dead, what can he not resurrect? If Jesus can resurrect from the dead, he can resurrect your dead marriage. If he can resurrect from the dead, he can resurrect your dead career. If Jesus can resurrect from the dead, he can resurrect your dead dream. There is nothing that he can't resurrect. I want you to think, whatever the biggest problem of your life is today, the empty tomb reminds us that he is the answer to all of our problems. Whatever problem you have today, you don't need a plan. Whatever problem you have today, what you need is a person, and that person is Jesus Christ. Let me ask you, is Jesus personal in your life? Have you come to the point of crossing the line of faith, and have you committed your life to Jesus Christ? It's as easy as A, B, C. First, all you have to do is admit that you're a sinner. Admit that you have fallen short of God's standard. Admit that you don't have it all together. The second step is to believe. Believe that Jesus is who he said he is, that he is the Son of God, and it was verified, it was punctuated there with the empty tomb. And then finally, C is just to commit your life to him. Commit your life to being a follower of Jesus Christ. It's as easy as A, B, C. In Romans chapter 10, verse 9, the Apostle Paul wrote these words. He says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Because the exclamation point of history is the resurrection of Jesus. I get asked by people often if I ever get tired of Easter. If I ever get tired of just talking about the same thing every Easter, that when Easter rolls around, that I've got to talk about the resurrection. And my response is that I love Easter. Because I don't look at it as I've got to talk about the resurrection. I love Easter because I get to talk about the resurrection. You see, it's the resurrection of Jesus that is the exclamation point, not just of history, but it's the exclamation point of my life. And so I was thinking about because he was the king who came to change everything, I was thinking about how Jesus and how the resurrection has changed my life. And here are some of the things that I came up with. I was dead, but because the tomb is empty, I am alive. I was a sinner, but because of the empty tomb, I've been declared righteous. I was a slave, but now because the tomb is empty, I've been set free. I was blind, but now the tomb is empty and I can see. I was weak, but because of the empty tomb, I've been made strong. I was a pauper, but now the tomb is empty and I've been made a prince. I was poor, but the tomb is empty, and now I am rich. I used to walk in darkness, but because of the empty tomb, I now walk in light. I used to be an orphan, but because the tomb is empty, I now have a father. The empty tomb has made the difference in my life. My life was in chaos, but because the tomb is empty, it has brought peace. I used to be under judgment, but now because the tomb is empty, I am now operating under grace. I used to be in distress, but the empty tomb has caused me to be rescued. I was directionless, but because the tomb is empty, I now have purpose. I used to live in filth, but because the tomb is empty, I now have purity. You see, it's the empty tomb that made the difference. I was powerless, but the empty tomb gave me power. I was defeated, but the empty tomb has given me victory. I was anxious, but the empty tomb has given me peace. I was hopeless, but the tomb is empty, and now I have hope. I was unholy, but because the tomb is empty, now I am declared holy. The empty tomb has made the difference. I was destined for hell, but because of the empty tomb, I am destined for heaven. I was once an enemy of God, but because the tomb is empty, I am now a child of God. You see, the exclamation point of history, the exclamation point of my life is the resurrection of Jesus. And I would encourage you today, don't miss the importance of Easter. And I pray that after today, that how you would describe Easter is not with a period, not with a question mark, not with quotation marks, but you would describe it with an exclamation point. If you would like more information about what it means to be a Christian and how to commit your life to Christ, please reach out to me or someone from Hillside or another Christian that you know so they can share with you how the resurrection has made a difference in their lives. Father, I thank you for your great goodness in our lives. I thank you that the tomb is empty. And I pray that for all of us, it would be the exclamation point of our lives. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks for joining me today. Next week, I'm going to start a series entitled Inside Out and how to control the emotions that want to take control. Hope to see you soon.